Okay, so you see that looks great. We are really inclusive. We have we have 4s, we have 5s, but we have also some opinions that we are not inclusive at all, and this is quite interesting. So let's go for some reality check. So we believe that we are inclusive. We really believe that we are inclusive, right? But what really happens when those neurodiverse individuals join the workforce? Let me ask you a question. How many of you in the last 6 months had to conduct or coordinate, or you maybe just heard about a coaching conversation with an employee because of so-called behavioral issues? And those behavioral issues, for example, this can be struggling with being on time, being emotionally volatile, staying isolated from the team, not being engaged in team activities, or maybe focusing on some insignificant details and slowing down the whole project. Does any of that sound familiar? Yes, right, exactly. This is exactly the paradox which we create when we encourage people to be themselves, and then we try to fix them if their ways of working don't fit the standard mold. And before I will invite my guests to the discussion, I wanted to show you their assessment of how inclusive the organizations are. And this assessment is from both perspectives, legal and psychological. So this is the assessment of people who are kind of dealing with the results of our so-called inclusivity on a daily basis. Artur, I would like to ask you the first question and start with you. You work with patients with ADHD and other neurological conditions on a daily basis. How do you think the current corporate environment is responding to their needs, what they are struggling with? How does it look from their perspective and also your psychological point of view?
Sure. Thank you, Magda, for having me, and thank you for the question. If you don't mind, I will go back for the moment to this concept of neurodiversity in general, because I think it's important to understand it even better. And we didn't have the movie.
We didn't have the opportunity to watch the movie, yes.
It's more fun. And I believe, and this is based on the recent concept of the British Psychological Society, that we need to really think about the neurodiversity as a whole. Like every experience that we have that might be related to any kind of psychological condition is in the spectrum of neurodiversity. You mentioned dyspraxia, you mentioned dyslexia. So we have those isolated cases, isolated learning difficulties that people have. And this is neurodiversity. Then we have ADHD and we have autism. These are the conditions that you are born with that will stay with you forever. There's, of course, you can have some therapy, you will have some improvements, but your brain is wired in this way and it will be with you forever. Then you have the conditions like depression. And this is also the period of your time when you will be neurodiverse. That will be the period of your time when your brain will work in a different way. And this is also neurodiversity. So in this newest concept, this is a very, very broad spectrum. You asked me the question how this is designed and how this is working for people who are neurodivergent. And I will, of course, focus on ADHD and autism because usually we speak about this when we speak about neurodiversity. Again, this is a spectrum. You will have people with ADHD who will be very highly functioning. They will struggle inside. You can be sure about it. But on the outside, they will do very well, especially when it comes to women. And this is also why we had such a huge problem with diagnosis of women, of girls at school. Girls at school have this huge push to be correct. For boys, it's all right if we are fooling around and we are not paying attention. But for girls, this is absolutely not acceptable. You have to sit still and you have to do the job. And when I'm speaking with patients, adult women, about their experience, they say, yes, we've been sitting still, but it was so painful. Yes, we had the wonderful grades, but it was very, very painful experience for us to be that good at school. So you have those people who are coping. This is difficult for them, but you probably don't even know that they have ADHD. But as a spectrum is broad, you will have also people, and you mentioned this in your slide, Magda, who are struggling that much that in most cases that they won't be able to fix their work. They won't be able to fix their relationships. They will be very big pain for the organization.
How is the daily life of those people, Artur, in organizations like ours? What's their biggest struggle?
Probably you will fire them after the trial period because they won't be on time. They will have very big problem to follow the instructions. Not because they don't want to, it's because, their brain is working so fast that they're trying to find a better way.
That's true. I never read instructions and I never follow instructions.
Yeah, here we are. So that's definitely challenging. But let's go back to those people who are dealing quite well. They are impacted by the organization of the time. They are impacted of the organization of the office. So here we have ADHD. And then you have the autism, the ASD. Before we have this difference between the Asperger syndrome and the autism. No longer we think that this separation is needed. We think now that everything is just a spectrum. So you will have those highly functioning people. It will be extremely difficult for them to adjust. I will speak about it in a bit. But most of the people with autism disorder, and you know that I'm very picky about this, they will just not be able to work in the environment that we have now in the office or in the organization.
So what happens? What happens when they are put in behind the desk?
Very good question.
What happens?
You know those town halls we have when we speak about many different aspects of work that might be important for some, but very often, first 5 or 10 minutes, it's really important for everyone. And then we speak about specific things that are important only for the group of people. So for those people with ASD who are extremely logical, who are extremely driven by reason, they will just know, they will never understand why you're doing it. Why you are wasting 45 minutes of the company time to speak about how to use the kitchen. For them, it's so simple that they will not understand it and they will become very frustrated about it. Mm-hmm. We are asking those people to use the software that very often, and I think that we all experience this, is not very logically structured. And for people who are not in spectrum, for people who are able to understand the deeper context, that, this is still the work in progress, that are the IT guys behind it who also struggle. It's easier. We can understand this. But for people who are very logical, they just don't understand why we are using this rubbish software. and there is no explanation. There's no good explanation. And if you will try to say it was like that for years, here there's the workaround to work around, they will not accept it. They will ask you questions, very uncomfortable questions. And I think that organizations are not ready for this. They are not ready to be open and to say you're right, this is not working fine. We have this tendency, and I was working corporate for many years, to silver line thing, to say maybe it's not perfect, but look how nice the kitten is. It's not working with people in spectrum. That's simply not possible for them to grasp the idea that this is not working.
So a lot of frustration and a lot of lack of understanding of the larger context, which makes
Yes.
them more difficult to adapt.
Yes.
And what about more day-to-day things, like one-to-one meetings or virtual meetings with cameras? What is happening with that?
I think that there is a bigger problem that we see now. Over the last few years, you invited people with neurodiversity to your companies, offering them working from home. And now, some of you came to the conclusion that you want them to sit back in the office. But your offices are not ready for those individuals. You cannot ask a person with ADHD or ASD to work comfortably in the noisy open floor plan. That just won't work. It won't work for them to, as you mentioned, spend a lot of time during the one-to-ones. And I know that there are still some companies who are doing it on a weekly basis for an hour. For this kind of logical thinking, you can really do it in 2 minutes. Just tell them what to do and they will follow. You don't need to ask about their cuts and how was their weekend, because they simply don't understand why you are wasting your and their time, which is, I think quite true actually. You should instead try to use their potential, because if you want someone to dig into your software, to fix it, to look for patterns, there are no better people than people with ASD. It's just remarkable how brilliant their mind is when it comes to looking for patterns. So I think that this is a huge lesson that still needs to be learned for organization, to stop silver lining, to stop trying to paint the walls that are just need fixing. I think that's the clue.
Okay, thank you so much, Artur. Gosia, I would like to turn to you now, because I think that we all have done an amazing progress if it comes to protection of minority rights. Is it gender, race, or sexual orientation? I think that if it comes to the legal solution, they are in place. How does that look if we think about neurodiversity concept? Are those people protected in any way? And does the law kind of keeps up with the challenges which we are facing now?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure if we can say that in Poland we are so well legally with protecting minorities. I wouldn't be so sure. So theoretically, we are on the right path, but legally, especially because of this, what happened in the law for the past years, we actually made a step back. That's at least my feeling. But getting back to neurodiversity, well, I will start saying that it doesn't look good. So the main problem is, as Artur said, this is a spectrum. What does it mean? It might be a small problem, it might be a huge problem. And from the legal perspective, if the neurodiversity is a big problem and it becomes a disability, then actually it's better for the employee and for the employer. Because once it's named disability, then the employer may get additional funding for this employee, and the employee may get additional days off, additional hours of break during the working day. They get days off for rehabilitation, for seeing doctors, specialists. So this is much better for them, and the employer gets more money. And the word which is a key here also is the knowledge. We all know about the disability and about the scale of this disability. But if it is as it happened to you, Magda, that you are an adult who is diagnosed with neurodiversity, which is not severe because you are doing very well in your life, also in your work life, then the problem is that once you get hired with neurodiversity, the employer doesn't know about it, and often the employee himself doesn't know about it. So there is no knowledge. and then the expectations might not be met very easily in the working place. So if this is not a disability, there is no legal protection at all. And then we should focus on expectations. Because on one hand, from the legal perspective, the employer may terminate a contract with an employee because of problems with communication, because of not meeting the expectations, also social expectations of the employer, but only in a case if the employee has been informed about these expectations at the beginning. So we come back to the word key, which is knowledge. And the problem is that mostly we don't have this knowledge. So first of all, it's important to be diagnosed and to know what are we capable of and what we are not capable of. And also to be open with the employer, with the management, so that they can also help these neurodiverse people to adjust the environment. And in case if these expectations are not met, but they have not been loudly explained before when the employment contract started, then there is at least a theoretical possibility of protection for this employee. But this is still a starting point. And in Poland, there are no case law. There is absolutely no case law about really fighting for neurodiverse people to get them back to work after somebody has terminated the contract with them because they have been so-called different socially from the other workers, or they did not meet expectations of the employer. And again, neurodiversity is not on a list of possibilities of discrimination which is forbidden by law. So if it would be a disability, then it gains protection. But otherwise, you cannot be discriminated because of your sex, because of your age, because of your race, because of your religion, but there is no neurodiversity. So this is just a starting point to broaden the scope of the definition of discrimination and what does it mean. And I think that there is a huge perspective for the future to also name neurodiversity as a reason for which discrimination is legally prohibited. But at this moment, this is a taboo in law, so nobody has ever even tried it. There is only slowly a theory rising about it. And there are aspects like European Court of Justice, for example, had cases like whether obesity, a person fired from work because of being of the obesity, whether this is discrimination or not. And the judgment from 2007, so maybe some years ago, but not that far away, says that, well, it's not discrimination. The employer may choose who he wants to hire. So this is quite sad, and this maybe doesn't give a good perspective for neurodiversity. But it's still 2007, we are in 2024, and I think that this is just a matter of time that this will also become get to the scope of the non-discrimination procedures in the law. But I am also curious, Artur, did you have a patient that has been fired because of neurodiversity, and whether he even had an idea to do something with it, like to start a legal fight to protect his rights?
Yes, and you know, this is quite common. And of course, they had no such idea to do something about it. But what I wanted to add is that I think that generally, and this is why it's so important to do the education piece, we are not prepared for facing, especially people with autism. This is beyond weird. This is beyond something, you know, when you meet a person and you feel that something is not right. When we are assessing patients for autism, one of the questions that we have to answer, we have to rate it as during the diagnosis, is how uncomfortable the interaction was. Because this is diagnostic. Those interactions with people with ASD are uncomfortable, very obviously. And employers are not ready for that. Because, you know, if you don't understand it better, this is really uncomfortable for you to speak to people with ASD.
But if an employee knew about it, then, and also shared it with the employer, this could give the perspective to find a solution, because this employee could be just amazing in a certain field of work where he is needed, but at the same time, he needs a little bit of adjustment. And if both sides would be aware about it, then do you agree it will be just
in the ideal world? Absolutely. But people with disability, which is, you know, most of the cases of people with autism, they have disability, like on a paper. They will be very afraid to disclose it. They will be very, very, very afraid.
We have seen also on the statistics slides that a lot of those people are reluctant to disclose their condition because of the fear of discrimination or other consequences that could meet them. Well, the picture that you both paint is quite dark and definitely not aligned with our Menti results. So do you think that it's possible to close this gap between our perception that we think that we are inclusive because we have a nice kitchen and we do some other initiatives, and the kind of sad reality of those people? Do you think that we have a chance of closing that gap?
Absolutely. Of course, yes. We just need to be better. We just need to be more open. We just need to be more educated. And we really need to, you know, detach ourselves from this idea that we are all the same, that we think the same, that we'll all, you know, go into the same direction. Because that's not, just simply not true. We are all different. And you know, sometimes you have to adjust. Sometimes you have to do the extra effort with some people, and that's okay, because maybe then we'll do the same in return for you.
Yes, I agree. I don't know if you all have the same experience, but when I was younger, well, I'm still young, but when I was younger, let's say, nobody talked about autism or ADHD, and there were people who were weird. We call them weird, you know, this weird guy, this weird girl. But they existed, they were just weird. And I think that we are getting better slowly. We still have a lot to do, but it's better to name it, knowing its pros and cons, because he is not weird, she is different, but this makes her do better work in this, and this, but maybe she's doing worse in this and these aspects. But if we adjust it, or we let her adjust the environment for this person, maybe by working at home, as you said, this is a place where it's much better for neurodiverse people to work, because they are able to adjust the environment. They might really be great employees with abilities that many other people don't have, because we are all different. And just acceptance and knowledge. This is something what I started with, knowledge. You named it education, but this is basically the same. And we are more and more educated, and if more and more companies will have this knowledge, and also the people will be diagnosed themselves, then we are on the right path. I hope, at least. Maybe I'm an optimist, but that's how I see it.
Okay, so it doesn't look great, but it can look great if we just be, you know, a bit more open-minded and a bit more open to adjustments, and a bit of probably less open to judging others. I would like to open the floor for questions, because you have two wonderful experts. So let's have maybe a short discussion at the end. How I would be actually very curious also to hear your opinions. Yeah.
Hi. Thank you for sharing. It was a very interesting session. In my role, I'm managing large teams, so for sure I have a chance to work with people who are neurodiverse. I'm just not aware, so it really helped me. But I want to ask how we as employers are practical and how we navigate also the dark side of personalities, right? Because we also have people who are, I mean, narcissistic, right? We also have people who are a little bit, I don't know, psychopaths. They are Machiavellist a little bit. And you know, in large organizations, in boardrooms, you have these type of people, right? So how are we smart to navigate and, you know, that we don't confuse a person who is honestly, is willing to work with us to somebody who has, you know, this, I would say, the dark side of personality. If you can give us certain tips. Thank you.
Yeah. How to make a difference, you know, how to recognize who is late because he is, you know, simply lazy, and who is late because the reality doesn't allow him to be on time because there is constantly something interrupting and getting in the way. How to make this call?
Thank you. This is like the complex one. So there is a huge difference between having autism or having ADHD and the personality disorder. And it's quite easy to spot it if you just know some characteristic. People with ASD, with autism spectrum disorder, they will have problem with maintaining the eye contact. They will not engage in the conversation. You know, it's like, also we are doing this during diagnosis, that we are trying to make it more like a conversation than the interview. So I'm saying in the middle of the conversation, out of nowhere, something like, you know, I have a cat, and I'm waiting for reaction. People with ASD, they will not react. They will just carry on. They will not try to engage in conversation. They will not maintain the eye contact, or this eye contact will be quite uncomfortable. People with ADHD, they will be late. You will see some patterns. People with ADHD, they will struggle to maintain, again, the conversation. They will switch subject. They will interrupt you. And they will be sorry. That's probably also the difference. People with ADHD, they will try to correct themselves. They understand that this is not nice to you. But they simply are not able to control the impulses. And then you have people with personality disorders. And very often they will be very charming, and out of nowhere, they will behave in the quite strange way. And probably that's the difference, that this is not the pattern that you will see all through all the interactions, that it will pop up in one or the other moment. And I think that this is very important to be able to distinguish it, because you can be probably quite acceptable for neurodiversity, while you should just walk away from the interaction with people who has a personality disorder, because this is the lost fight from the very beginning. Thank you.
Hi, very interesting presentation. Thank you for sharing. I have a question, or actually two questions, about traps and pitfalls in these processes. So one would be how to make sure that we don't go from education, knowledge and being inclusive, to labeling. So when we educate managers, so that they don't go into this mode like, okay, ADHD, ASD, and so that they map, let's say, their whole teams. And the other question, the other trap is justifying behaviors that are not acceptable with neurodiverse conditions. So, oh, I can be late, I can be impolite or rude or disruptive because of something, because of any condition. So have you come across such scenarios, how to prevent them, what works best?
The first part will be difficult for me because I'm trained to label.
If I could just have one reflection here. Labeling in this kind of framework, I wouldn't say it would be that bad. Because the relationship at work, they are not very profound, right? They are rather shallow, right? So labeling in those kind of interactions may actually bring some good results, because if I know that, okay, this is my ADHD person, this is my dyslexia person or whatever, even if I will label this person in my head, but I have this person with some, ABC, this is how I need to, because this is ADHD person, so they will do this, and I have to react this and this, it's fine, because this will turn out into a good outcome for both of them. Because let's remember one thing. We at work, it's not our job to cure those people. It's not our job to treat those people. It's not our job to create a, therapeutical environment for them. No, it's just about making practical adjustments that will allow them to perform their job. This is all we need to do, nothing more. So a bit of labeling, even if the labeling is, of course, not a good thing, I think that a little bit of labeling wouldn't hurt here. I wouldn't mind to be labeled as ADHD person by my boss if he knows that he needs to do some adjustment for me in exchange, right? So we make this. So that would be my reflection.
So going back to the question, I think that this is about the expectations, because I fully agree that you have to be on time. But if you have ADHD person, this is not realistic. So
I am on time. It is realistic.
But I wasn't. I was never on time. And then you have to have this conversation with yourself. Am I okay with this, that this person will start somewhere between 9 and 10? Because for some tasks, it's perfectly okay, like in payroll. My colleagues from payroll here. It's perfectly okay. You can start at, somewhere in between. We don't cross these boundaries, but somewhere in between is okay. And you will see lots of ADHD people at work and very few of ASD. Like, this is something, we have underdiagnosis of ADHD and overdiagnosis of autism. Autism is quite rare. And they are very specific characteristic of ASD. So not everyone who is impolite will be autistic, not at all. And don't go into this trap, because people are very often overusing the term of being, autistic. They're not. They have to change, and they can't change. So I think but again, this is about expectation, because if you have indeed someone with ASD and you expect this person to face your client, and you are expecting that this interaction will be nice for the client, then this is your problem, not theirs.
Okay, thank you very much.
Maybe last questions. It's okay, lady first. So we should be finishing 3 minutes ago, but we started with some delay, so I will let you talk for 5 more minutes, okay? Cool.
Good morning.
Very good morning.
Przepraszam, w jakim języku mówimy? Po polsku? Okay, English, sorry.
Because we have some English-speaking people in the audience.
I simply got confused. Hello, my name is Kasia Warchał. I work for IKEA. And I think I've got 3 questions. The first one, Magda, you also represent a big company.
Yes.
Could you share with us a good example how the corporation like yours have adjusted to be a welcoming and inclusive place? Some practical tips. Mm-hmm. Another question that I have is, what is your advice, guys, about how to support the leaders who will be people managers, yes, for those colleagues? And my third question is, what would be your advice if the organization that I lead, the way of working like co-creation, cooperation, teamwork is really valued, and that's a way we work and actually develop people? What would be your advice? How those colleagues will sort of like function in this environment, or maybe some tips? Thank you.
So very quick, very interesting questions, and maybe we can find each other after the session. I think that IKEA is leading the way as well if it comes to inclusion and the way how you are developing people. That was always my very high benchmark, IKEA. If it comes to practical solutions that, for example, I have introduced to my team, is the flexible working time. But I also have to admit that not every work type can be kind of applied to every work type. I was previously working in customer service, and the time schedule in customer service is extremely tight. You need to start at this hour, so the flexible working time would not work there. I was very lucky that now in my current company we are my team is like a back office team, so we can have this adjustment. We have also very short meetings. Usually the meetings at American Global Business Travel are set for half an hour and never longer. If we have a longer meeting, it means that it is really something very important, and we have very few meetings. So meetings are happening only when they are absolutely necessary. We do have town halls, though. I have introduced them, and I am conducting them, because I believe that, okay, we need to remember about the people from spectrum, but we have the majority of our workforce which are neurotypical, and they need this context information, and they need this larger perspective. But I think that it works quite well with us. Not every solution will work at every time. And if it comes to education of leaders, there is a huge way to go. This is, I think, the most, the group that we should be focusing on most, because they are dealing with those people on daily basis, and they are dealing with very practical issues. Being on time is just, the typical example, but this is the manager's issue. He needs to have this person on time. The person is struggling, so what to do? How to find the adjustment? Very difficult topic, and it can be a topic for a very long conversation. And I feel that that our time is up.
Don't worry. Yeah, because we have 9 minutes now to change the stages if you want to. But Magda, Malgorzata, Artur, thank you very much. It was a very interesting session. Thank you all who asked the questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.